Fantastic. Hey, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in Asia Pacific today. And I think we might even have some early risers join us from the UK or some late nighters from the US. So welcome everyone. I'm really excited to be here and to be able to host this incredible group of people around me right now as we talk about what it's like to go beyond our pre-sales careers. Now, everyone on this call have been in pre-sales before, and I've had the privilege of knowing quite a few of them. And I think I'm the only one left that's actually still in pre-sales. So we'll get started in just a second. I'm gonna quickly just hit share my slide deck, and we'll use that as just a guide, and we'll carry on. All right, let me just hit share really quickly, and of course present. So if you are here to join us for our webinar today, we've got a fantastic group of panelists. If you're thinking about what it's like to go beyond your amazing pre-sales career, then you're in the right place. My name is Paul Baptist, and I am the Senior Director of Solution Consulting at ServiceNow. But really, I, like a lot of you, enjoy being in pre-sales and think it's one of the best jobs. And so I was really curious why some people would ever leave such an amazing job. And I found 3 people who have. And so we should tap into their brains and work that out because, these are also 3 very successful individuals. But before we get started, I just want to say thank you, all of you on this call, for making the Pre-Sales Collective possible. I was just chatting on a briefing call yesterday with Lauren, one of our panelists, and he just remarked that he wished there was something like this when he was still in pre-sales. I'm just saying, Lauren, it's not too late. Come back. You're welcome. But thank you for making this possible. It's really all of us taking some time to share with one another about the really cool things that we've learned to help our vocation continue to grow and continue to be recognized as a real role out there in the technology industry. So how can you get the most out of today? Well, we've turned the chat off because we're in webinar mode, but there is the Q&A section. So you should be able to, if you've got questions, please feel free to post it in there. I obviously have some questions that I'm gonna take some time and then ask these fine gentlemen. But if you've got questions that you'd like to ask, by all means, put it in there and we'll get one of them to answer so that we can learn a little bit more about them. So, without further ado, let's actually go and get to know some of them. So we'll go and throw around to each other just shortly, but I'll take some time and introduce them as well, just really quickly. From your screen on the left, Puneet Sharma. Puneet is now the Strategic Account Director at Microsoft. I had the privilege of working with him when we were at Salesforce together, and he is by far one of the best sales executives I've ever worked with, an incredible individual and very, very successful. Lauren Scott is now a part of marketing operations at Canva. Canva, as many of you know, the darling of the Australian tech industry. I put a post out to our community and said, hey, do we know some incredible people who, in fact, have progressed into a marketing career? And Lauren's name came up almost immediately. So it'd be really interesting to hear what he has to share about what it's like going from pre-sales into the marketing side of the business. And of course, Troy Sellers. Troy Sellers is the product director at Grax, which is I'm not going to steal your thunder, Troy, but I believe they're a partner of Salesforce's. Troy and I had the, again, privilege of working together. I'm going to toot our horns a little bit, Troy, and say we were probably the first master solution engineers in the APAC region. Woot, woot. Well done to you and to me. Pat myself on the back. And of course, we'll actually go straight away. I'm going to turn the share off now so that we can actually see these gentlemen. And Troy, I might start with you. Why don't we actually jump straight in and ask you to introduce yourself a little bit, tell us about what you do,
sure.
And then also tell us how you actually fell into your pre-sales career.
Yeah, no, thanks, Paul. Thanks for that great introduction. And thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for the other panelists as well for being here. I've been super excited to hear your guys' stories as well as we get in today. So Yeah, I sort of felt interesting that you use that phrase. I think there's a lot of us that fall into pre-sales. I'm an electrician by trade, of all things. So I left school and went to work in a family business and learned how to do electrical work. Was an electrical contractor for some time. I went back to school and then learned how to write code. And it wasn't until I was in my early 30s that I came down to Sydney and started as a Java developer and spent a bunch of years just writing code. So I came to it, I guess, from a more technical perspective than some, which was super interesting because I came into the world from a consulting, into pre-sales from a consulting world. And I think I had to learn that lesson that every consultant that comes over the fence into the pre-sales world has to learn, is that your detailed answers are no longer that one of those things that are super necessary. And luckily, I had a few really good mentors when I started on my pre-sales career as well. You do sort of talk about it rightly. It was just serendipity that it landed me in pre-sales. I didn't know what it was. I had to get a friend of mine to explain it to me. She was in her pre-sales career at the time, and she had to explain to me what it was. And I thought that was really, really an interesting thing to do. And then at a party one night, I met how used to be our old boss, who said he had an opening and I should come along and try. And I found out that once I joined into the SE team, it was exactly what I wanted to do. I really found it a fantastic job. It was really exciting. My first boss at the time, a gentleman that's out of North America, had been over here, a guy by the name of Tim Lucas. He explained it to me. It was probably one of the best descriptions of what a pre-sales career was like, especially, I mean, at Salesforce at the time, we did a lot of work in the commercial business, so sort of, small to medium enterprise. And he was like, yeah, it's kind of like doing an MBA. You just talk to a whole different bunch of businesses every single day. And, you basically walk in and ask, how do you make money? And try and understand how that business sort of, gets to revenue, and then try and help them understand how the technology that you're working with could help them to achieve that a little better. And I found that part of the business or that part of the career, it was fascinating. I really, really enjoyed it. I got to bring, I guess, a large part of the technical background that I had around sort of building, writing in code, and I'd been sort of product manager for a small startup in Sydney before I came over, and so that sort of helped part of it. And then there was that whole big breadth about how to do sales, how businesses work, what did revenue mean, all those. We used to talk about it as soft skills, but I don't really make that definition anymore. I think there's just skills. And there's no sort of thing as soft skills and hard skills. There's just skills. But there was like that part of me that really helped me round out as well. So it was, yeah, and I think it was 9 years in that career before I moved on.
Nice. Lauren, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into pre-sales too?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me okay, Paul?
We can.
Great. Somewhat similar, it's like sort of that pinball machine where I was pinballing around and found my way into pre-sales by, I think, just the natural evolution of things. I was actually trying to break into some larger organizations in AE roles, and it was turned away. So I didn't have the right sort of personality, I think, for the long-term AE type of play. And I'm so glad that they did turn me away, because Oracle actually, it was at the time, called me back 3 weeks later and said, we didn't quite think you were right for that AE role, but you seem like a great fit for this solution engineering thing. And have you heard about that? And that really piqued my interest. And that's when it all started. Before that, I was doing some sort of scrappy work around the tech startup scene in Boston, and just sort of sharpening my teeth in some like sort of building little tools for enabling small sales teams within startups. So I knew I liked the technical side, but I knew I really liked looking at what's happening in the market as well, and trying to find sort of product fit within an organization. And pre-sales just turned out to be a really nice middle ground of those two things. And as you said, Troy, it's an MBA. It's a training. It's also a training. It was a training ground for me, where I was able to just, I think, develop more of a T-shaped skill set and go deep and develop some domain expertise in a couple of things, and go quite deep over the course of a decade. All while also sort of developing some product management, some cross-functional skills, project management, some data analytics skills, looking at integrations, REST API development, some front-end web development skill set. So it was a really nice way to develop that sort of T shape, which it proven well, and turns out employers look for that. Yeah, so that's my story there.
Fantastic. And Puneet, how did you too stumble like the rest of us did?
So hi, so I did stumble, but it was a different stumble altogether. So the story was different because I was an MBA. So I did I had an engineering background. I worked in a telco company for a year. I was climbing towers and trying to fix issues when there were networking problems. Then I ended up being in a management college, and I really wanted to be an HR guy, because in my previous company, I realized the people who have influence can play around with things with the HR managers, because that's what we knew. And at like 21 years of age, all you see is, and you're awed by the HR people, because they're hiring people and they are progressing people. So I was like, one thing that I would like to aspire for and do in my life and where I feel that I've achieved success would be becoming an HR manager. So that was my aspiration. Getting into an MBA college, realizing that studying HR and studying human psychology and behavior was not my thing. So I realized that technology is a thing that I really would always fancy. So I did my MBA, joined a technology organization as a part of their management hire program, like the Fresh Management Graduate Hire Program. So it was a good opportunity, but interesting enough, I was part of the Siebel practice. So they asked me, what do you want to do? So I said, MBA, studied marketing. Maybe CRM is a good domain, so because it speaks of self-service marketing. So yes, I joined the Siebel practice. Interesting enough, my manager then was a guy who's always been through a delivery organization, doing projects, managing large deliveries, and now had a team of like 150 people as an entire practice head. And he didn't know what to do with this guy who's been hired by the executives, calling us that the next fresh blood in this organization, which is going to transform. But what do I do with him? He's neither technical enough that I can involve him into a project, nor he's a sales guy, or he doesn't have enough customer experience to work with customers that he can actually put him as a sales guy either. So for a year, I have no role. So just come there, try to mock myself as I'm busy looking at an empty screen and just play around with some Excel sheets. Finally, I realized that there is a function called pre-sales, which means you don't need to be technical. You could actually be leveraging some of your management skills, what you've heard and learned theoretically in business school, and you could possibly try to add value to yourself ultimately. So I asked for a pre-sales role, that I want to be a pre-sales in that case. So gradually he started giving me RFPs to work on as a delivery organization. And from there on, I grew up and I loved it. Then it was actually, then you start realizing what you're doing. I didn't know what pre-sales was all about. Initially, for me, pre-sales was just filling RFPs that point in time. Later, you realize that it goes much beyond that. You're actually interacting with customers, and that's what Lauren and Troy mentioned, where it's a learning all through, because no company actually helps and teaches us what exactly the pain points are. It's the customers who teach us in terms of, and we use those skills and bring it back to other customers. So it was the greatest foundation for me to actually understand what happens in the real business context and why they eventually end up buying technology, or why they eventually end up doing transformation altogether. So that was a great ground for me to actually then pick up pre-sales and carry on with that and ride that wave. So that was my story.
Great. Can I hit up a detail for a second there that I always find this fascinating when people come to a career from an unexpected path, and what you just described was kind of unexpected there. How do you, like, have you got an example? Like you talked about understanding human psychology. Like, how did that help you as a pre-sales engineer? Did you find that useful, or was that something that was like, all right, it's in the past and I move on now?
Not much. So what helped in my education was the fundamentals of what I read about marketing, for an example, fundamentals of sales, for an example, or the sales process, because we did do certain internship that were a real life experience of understanding a sales process or a marketing process. And lucky for me that I was in a CRM space where I was able to theoretically at least put up these conversations and try to understand from a customer's point of view. And that was the biggest help. Whether now I'm a sales guy and I realized what you learned then was that at least that helped me in aligning to what the customer wants to say, as in forget even coming up with a solution, but at least trying to understand and embrace where he's actually trying to make a point at, try to understand what his problems could be. So human psychology, then it didn't help me much because I didn't even complete the course because I realized it was too much for me. So, but then on when I got onto the marketing side of things or international sales, or I read the fundamentals of product and packaging and pricing strategies and all that, that's where it actually did help me a bit, at least to break the ice with a customer and get started with some fundamentals of things here.
That's really interesting to know. Like, each of you talked about the fact that, being in pre-sales was like doing an MBA. I love what you said, Lauren, about like, that T-shaped sense of knowledge, so wide, but also deep in some areas. And then of course, Puneet, you talked about this real business context, right? And about packaging and products and pricing and all of that kind of lends itself towards how we've kind of stumbled into this role and how we've been quite successful. Now, I want to push a poll out to everybody out who's listening to us. And there's going to be 3 questions. Okay, the first one is which of the following, we want to know, which part of pre-sales you're currently in now. And then we'll actually want to know how long you've been in pre-sales. And then finally, we'd love to know whether or not, you're actually thinking about looking outside of pre-sales as well. So I'm just going to hit launch the poll. And so go ahead and fill it out. Let us know what you think best describes your role currently. And I'll actually, should have actually let our panelists vote, but I'm not sure. Can the panelists see the actual poll?
We can see, but we can't vote.
We can't vote.
Yeah, poor thing. Yeah, I'll make sure I tick the box next time so you guys can vote too. Although the first question is which of the following pre-sales option the best describes you, you'll be all other.
Other. I'm still aspiring.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm gonna end this one. Looks like most people have responded, and we find that the majority of people are in fact pre-sales individual contributors. We've got a couple of people who are leaders, a few people who are aspiring. So this is a great group to be part of, and I'd love to get to know who the other is a little bit later on as well. So if you're in the Q&A, by all means, please let us know. Next question, which is how long have you been pre-sales? I'll make sure I'll tick the box so that our nice panelists can also respond to this. So how long have you been here? Oh, if it's me, long time.
Try not to date yourself, Paul. You still look young.
Nice.
I don't know about everyone else as well. I find that pre-sales in my life anyway has been one of the things that's held my attention for longer than all the other things I've done. Where normally it would be a couple of years on either job. Like when I landed in this pre-sales role, I found it had, I'm not sure if it was the challenge or just, I guess, the diversity of things you do, that it really felt like over the 9 odd years that I was in it, a couple of years before that, it really felt to go faster than all the others. And it felt like it wasn't just one career.
Absolutely. Yeah. And was it the same for you guys as well? Yeah.
Absolutely, it never ends. So while I chose a specific option, but it's like I still continue to do pre-sales while I'm a sales guy as by designation, but you still continue to do because that's what helps sell.
Yeah. It's very interesting. We'll definitely drill in on that a little bit, but it looks like the majority of people who've responded are around the 5 to 10 year mark, and quite a big group of people who've been 10 years plus. And of course, probably about a third of people are between 1 and 4 years. So you're starting your career. Let's see, let's end this one. And then finally, of course, the next question, which is, are you thinking potentially of a role outside of pre-sales? This will give our panelists all and myself a sense of whether or not this is something you're thinking about.
I guess we have to answer yes.
Well, I feel like you guys have already done it, so
No, I've actually answered, don't be silly. The pre-sales is the best job ever.
Yeah, that's right. Don't be silly. That's nuts. Why are you even running this webinar, Paul Baptist? Like, no one will ever leave. This is like Hotel California, basically. We're going to join, but none of us will leave. So look, this is super interesting, right? That a lot of people are in fact considering a role outside of pre-sales. You know, over 60% are considering. So you guys are perfect to help us try to work this out as well. So let me now throw, you know, Lauren, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now and how did you get there?
Yeah, sure. So I am working at Canva. I've been there for coming on 9 months now, running a small team of marketing operations folks. We are geared at helping Canva build and amplify essentially a new business within our business, which is a B2B, a strong B2B business. So within that, we have a few sort of core
sorry to
pillars.
interrupt, Lauren. Just in case some people don't know who Canva are. There's probably only like 2 people on this call, but just in case, you know, maybe tell us a little bit about Canva too.
Yeah, so Canva is democratizing design for the world, and that goes really broad, but we provide a platform, a set of tools and templates and marketplace to enable visual communication. And it's really interesting that can be applied to the education space, it can be applied to the B2B space, it can be applied to the consumer space, the nonprofit space. That's widely applicable, but Canva looks at itself really as a sort of a disruptive technology, methodology to amplify the use of visual communication and bring to life with ease a graphic design skill set.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, so within that, we're looking at the sort of B2B and organizational use cases. And within that, we're really focused on the systems, technology, and data architecture to enable both our marketing team to sort of go to market with highly successful campaigns and be able to understand the efficacy of those campaigns, as well as iterate on those campaigns, but also broadly across sales, marketing, and product and support, and how we all interact together to provide world-class customer and user experience for our users as they navigate through the world of Canva, going from a small consumer all the way to a large organizational user. So there's so much to do, and we're very much growing, and I'm very much growing, as is my team. But that's sort of what I've been up to in the last 7 months.
Nice. And you know, like something that I'd love for you to, I'll come back to you on this question shortly. Yeah. But Troy, you know, how, you know, you were, as you said, you were in your pre-sales role for quite a few years, and then you made the jump into this product role. How did you get there? How did that happen? And of course, you know, what have you been doing with your pre-sales skills? And then we'll come back to you, Lauren, about that as well.
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, I think it became clear to me. So I, sort of the end of my career as a pre-sales engineer, I was working with the Heroku platform. So I spent a lot of time just doing a little bit more of a technical pre-sale, working with developers and things, which is really suits me down to the ground. It was definitely my core skill set when I was at Salesforce. And I remember pretty clearly, actually, I was down in Melbourne and was in the office in Melbourne there. We had a customer there, and it was exactly what you want when you're a pre-sales person. We had the decision makers in the room. We had a good amount of time with them. We had like this 2-hour meeting. They had a pressing need to buy. You know, we ticked all the boxes, and I was in the middle of a demo that was just going fantastically. Like, everyone was engaged. Everyone had great questions. Like, the CEO was agreeing with me and telling me that this is why they had to buy it, and you couldn't set up a demo that was going to go better. And I just realized at that point that I'd had enough. It was just this moment. I'm like, names doesn't matter, but like the CEO just turned around and was just so invigorated by what we were showing, because what it meant for their business. And I just realized I didn't care. And that was my epiphany, right? Like everything I do with pre-sales, I enjoyed it, but the outcome no longer held any engagement for me. And then it was 2 years, I think it took
Was
me
it
to
because
realize.
it wasn't challenging anymore, Troy? Was it because it wasn't challenging anymore?
I think there was part of that. I think it was probably a large part of it. It kind of felt like we just got to the end of that natural progression and I needed to go and do something else. And then for me, the hard bit was finding out what that something else was. And I did this thing, and I know, Paul, that you're familiar with it, but we did this thing at Salesforce a lot. And my now wife was a very big proponent of it. And I will echo everything she says about it. But I basically spent a long time to sit down and understand my 3 core values, like to do a little bit of value mapping and understand more about me when I wanted to take that next step. And so for me, I sort of came down to the 3 things that I value more than the core values exercises. Just, what are the things that personally important to you? For me, it was like, honesty, reliability, like being reliable, and then having fun, like having fun at work. And those sort of really professionally sum up me. And once I spent the time to do that, I could start to evaluate new opportunities through that lens. And then this opportunity. So Grax is a Salesforce partner, as you sort of mentioned before, Paul, where we are a backup, restore, and archive solution for Salesforce. And fairly small startup company. And I'd been looking to a startup to go to. I was pretty excited by that. And the thing that sort of got me over the line to go and join them was that there was a couple of things, the personnel. There's a lot of early Heroku folks at Grax, which is nice. It's nice to go somewhere with some people that you know and trust. And then just I got to look at the job as a product manager, fit those things really well. And it's really interesting. A lot of the things I learned as a pre-sales engineer fit perfectly into product management. You can go in to take this technical thing. You've got to have an idea of what is possible. Like when you're building software, everything's possible. And so it's not so much what's possible. I sort of misspoke there. It's what's worth it. Is it worth spending 2 years on a feature? Like you've got to have that ability. Can someone sell it? Can I position it in the marketplace? Does it fit into the product lens, and does it fit into the strategy of the company we're doing? And should we build this thing? And you really bring that customer focus to a group of software engineers. They're pretty smart people that we work with, but that's the bit that they don't have. They've spent their entire career, crafting these things out of code, and they don't quite often get the fact that sometimes people don't care how difficult it is. Don't like that's, and so it's worked really well for me. I find it. I think I've renewed that engagement that I'd lost as a pre-sales engineer to do it. But it felt like a natural progression for sure.
Nice, fantastic. Just in case if any of you are on the phone and you're thinking, hey, this thing that Troy talked about finding your values is something interesting to you. It actually comes from a book called The Leadership Challenge, and it helps leaders try to work out how to draw the key values in your team. And so it's by a couple of guys named James Kouzes and Barry Posner. So if you ever want to look that up, it's called Leadership Challenge. A really cool thing to do just for yourself as well. But hey, Puneet, I'll come to you. Same question, where are you now? How did you get there? But because you're an AE, let me guess. I'm going to try to guess. Was it because you looked at the sales guys and went like, hey, I can do that and get paid what they did? Tell us a little bit more.
So I work for Microsoft, had a great opportunity to work with Paul at Salesforce. So, and at Microsoft, I'm part of the enterprise team. I look after my business segment, which is business applications, so which is CRM, low-code applications, Power BI. So I'm responsible for the business for certain key accounts in Singapore. My journey to sales was you realize that when you're working with, and one thing that as pre-sales, you learn a lot is because you're working across multiple salespeople. You understand their strengths, you understand what's so good and what is not so good. That was one learning that you come across. You come across with various different customer landscapes and industries as well. So you realize that when you do not work with sharpest of the salespeople, and I had an opportunity to work with, you do feel that why not I try it. That's one. Second, you also realize that many times you would feel, I felt as that I'm sharing with this group honestly that I am a glory hunter and I like being recognized. And I felt that point in time that the organization I was in, the recognition was always first place to actually take that recognition was a salesperson when the deal was being closed. And I felt sometimes cheated, that is, and I did feel that haven't been given the right amount of recognition to me for the amount of effort I have put in. I had a very funny chase for club, and an annual recognition of success used to be your club achievement. And there was no set criteria for pre-sales people that point in time in that organization I was in. That there is no criteria that if you achieve X, Y, Z, and you will make you to achieve or get a club recognition. So I really wanted to I didn't have answers to such things, and I didn't wanted to. I realized that's something that I can actually achieve because I've seen people who've been successful and have not been so successful, and I realized that may be something that I should try for. I realized that that solved my problem of having a very quantifiable way of defining what successful is, and it looked easy, and it really looked easy. But it looked easy that point in time that, okay, this is simple. As in the guy walks into a meeting, all he does is just shake hands, introduce people and sits. And it's you who actually take over. You understand the customer's problem. You make sure that by the time you actually walk out, the customer understands that you have an answer for them. And this guy actually just does the initial way of shaking hands. Many a time he'll be equally lost. More or less lost than the customer. So I wanted to be that lost guy in the meeting because that life looked convenient at that point in time. That was my journey. As in, I wanted to get a convenient life. But yeah, I was wrong.
I was going to say, how did that work out? Can I ask a follow-up? How long did it take you when you started your journey as an AE that you realized, wait a minute, there's more in this than I suspected?
A week. And so and that's super funny in a way, because I still don't know what went wrong. In a way that when you look at the life from that perspective and you observe closely for 7 years, you realize that, okay, this life is easy. And in 7 days, you realize that you're totally wrong. And I still can't quantify what was wrong. It's just that there are different roles and different value propositions you're a part of, and you don't realize what goes into the shoes of that guy who's wearing it. Yeah, it wasn't too long for me to realize that it was a different perspective altogether.
I love that. It certainly was very different for me when I made the transition into sales as well. All of a sudden, your manager goes like, "So what are you closing today this month?" And you're going like, "I don't know. Doesn't it like somebody else does that? Surely." But hey, so Lauren, we've heard from yourself about how you kind of got into it, and we've heard from the others about like how their pre-sales skills have helped. In your current role now, like what has helped you based on how has your pre-sales experience kind of helped you progress in your career at Canva?
Yeah. So I'll tell the story a little bit and then get to that. So if we backtrack like 2 years ago, I was in Boston and doing a mini MBA course that HubSpot offered at the time. And as part of that, I got to sit down and we went out to dinner with our CEO at HubSpot, Brian Halligan. And I sat next to Brian for dinner and we had a great time. And he turns to me in the middle of the dinner and he says, what do you actually do at HubSpot? What's your role? I said, I'm a sales engineer. He said, sales engineering, it is the best role you could ever do earlier in your career. He said, I was a sales engineer. I was a sales engineer for 8 years. And for me, that was like this moment where I went, whoa, what? You were an SE and now you're the CEO of HubSpot and you're such a proponent of that. And that sort of got me thinking big about how I could apply that skill set and where I could go with that, having seen. So then kind of like what Troy was alluding to, I did this values exercise, which doesn't really sound as sort of formal or well formatted as what you guys have done, but came out with an output that I wanted to be a lot more hands-on. I wanted to move further away from sales. And that the things that were giving me that MBA style education and looking at use case and business after business after business actually led me to think, I want to be in the business. I want to, instead of looking at and advising, I want to be in a problem space for multiple years. and just be so ingrained and working with my team that I have to just throw myself in the deep end and figure it out. And so that was like my sort of motivation. And then I was actually at HubSpot working on the Canva project and advising the Canva team about how they should structure their architecture. And midway through the deal cycle, they turned around to us and said, "Do you know anyone that can actually head up this marketing operations function?" And so I messaged them on the side, like, yeah, I think
this guy.
I think I know someone. So I made the jump, but that was kind of neat because I always wanted to test out that like vendor to client jump, and whether that's a viable pathway. And it turned out it is. It turned out you can actually take a client that you're working closely with, form some strong relationships, and jump ship and apply that T-shaped skill set in a deeper way. Now I'm, I'm so close to the fire that the buck stops with you when you're in operations, and it's quite chaotic, and it's difficult at times, and we're definitely in the deep end of it, but I'm loving that. So back to your question about what skills you apply. You know what? I even just fundamentally beyond the technical skills, like I noticed when I jumped over to Canva, I was running meetings better than people. Even just like you discredit the fact that people don't learn how to run a proper meeting and set an agenda and get an outcome from that meeting. And we think of it in pre-sales as like, this is what you need to keep the deal going. But that's the same thing within the organization as well. This is what you need to keep the project going, that thread, or keep progressing. So fundamentally, just like running a meeting, working with teams to progress a project. When I was in pre-sales, I felt like I was onto something because I developed sort of two principles that I felt distinguished an exceptional SE from an average SE. And the two things were, number one, you can sell with a project plan. You can sell with a plan. So you basically become so good at listening to your prospect that you go and then create what looks like a customized plan for them. And within that plan, obviously phase one is like, buy our solution. Phase two is whatever. It's a 3 to 5 kind of phase plan, depending on what you're selling. And you're actually justifying the purchase of your solution because you've thought through a comprehensive plan that makes sense to them. And building on that, the other principle that I started to find was like just being better at organizing information than everyone else. When people buy software, when people buy stuff, and software especially, there's so much information out there, and they're struggling to organize all of that, as well as internal, external information. And if you can be the one that takes all of that info, organizes it into threads, and helps them prioritize it, you'll be a better SE, and you'll be a better selling team. You'll provide a better experience, and more often than not, you'll sell your solution over your competitors. So I took those two things into what I'm doing now as well. Being excellent at planning and project planning, as well as organizing information, which happens for us to be a nice sort of like kill two birds with one stone, because we love organizing information visually, especially. So I've really enjoyed that aspect.
That's brilliant. So look, gentlemen, we've only got like about 5-6 minutes left. We saw that over 60% of people on this call right now are thinking about their next roles. All of you have gone on to your next roles outside of pre-sales. Like what tips would you give people who are thinking about it? Like, I'll throw it open. Who would like to go first? What tips would you give us?
Yeah, I'll go. I've been thinking about this recently because some other friends of mine have been asking that similar question. The only advice, or the only thing I would say, the two things I'd say to people, one is know your own values first. I think, Lauren, you touched on it as well. Like, it's really easy to make the decision about where you want to go when you know what are your core values, what are those inner things that are driving you to make the change. And then you can for me, it just gave me a framework to evaluate options against. And if everyone's on the calls like me as an SE, you need a logical way to think about things. It's typically something that SEs need, and for me, it really helped. The second thing I would say, which is probably even bigger, is you're not making a decision for the rest of your life. Like, everyone can take a step. Like, you can take a step, and if it's the wrong thing, you can step back, right? Or step sideways. Like, it's just a step. Everyone gets hung up on this next thing, and I'd say you're not making a lifetime commitment. So be bold if you feel the need.
Nice. Anyone else?
Yes, I totally agree with what Troy said, was understanding your strengths, how those strengths can be used, not because what the organization, many people would want to move away from pre-sales to even look at other options because they think that the growth opportunities or the other option to go higher in an organization are more. But why would that be the most important thing? As in a way that do you see yourself doing what that person does? As in, that's why it's important not to get awed and influenced by, and I would say wrongly influenced by the successes that job gets or recognition that job gets, but not understanding what it takes to actually get there. So have a complete view of what actually does take to understand that point of view before making a decision. And the second is absolutely take a step. So take a calculated step in a way that being aware that you are the right one, and asking too many people. Sometimes I've asked many people before moving from sales to pre-sales to sales. It just doesn't help. I realized everybody would actually ultimately say that ultimately you're the best judge. 10 people I asked, and 10 of them will actually tell me I'm the best judge. So if I'm the best judge, and it's only going to confuse you. So if you think, as Troy rightly said, take a step, try it out. Pre-sales, your skills would always help in whatever function that we would like to take. Yeah.
Love that. Lauren?
Yeah, I got three things here. So the first is, well, the first two are kind of go together, which is back yourself and take a leap of faith. If you're doubting that you can do it or where you should be in your career or that you have the skills, you do. Just get yourself to a point where you can throw yourself in the deep end and you're taking that leap of faith that you're going to figure it out. And even if it's not in that next role, it's going to be the one after. You're going to keep moving and figure it out. So just back yourself. And the other part is just think about how you measure your success. And it's not always going to be a upgrade in title or in salary that enables long-term career growth. So I think for me, that was really looking at measuring my success and what I'm learning and the experience that I'm gaining in my next roles. And that has proven to open a whole bunch of doors. So I think, yeah, not getting too tied to the sort of like linear salary and title upgrades, and thinking about that more creatively is helpful as well.
Yeah, I really love that. One of my mentors who is now, a CEO of Zendesk, I went to her once and said, very openly, I was really disappointed. I didn't get a specific promotion. And then she pulled me aside and she said, like, if you're always looking at the next job, then it's a yes/no decision. If you get it, you're happy. If you don't get it, you're sad, right? It's very clear. But she said, if you look at the skills you want to develop, and you might have 10 things you want to develop, all of a sudden now the roles in front of you open up, because in some roles you might be able to learn 5 skills, you're winning. In some roles you learn 3 skills, still winning. So it was much more exactly what you said, Lauren, which is like, look at what's important to you. The next job, that job title may not be the most important. If you're learning a new skill, you're developing yourself in some way, that could also be a great potential for us. So look, gentlemen, we've gone around, we've had lots of discussion. I'm certain that people are probably going to reach out to you on LinkedIn and kind of tap your brain a little bit more. But I quickly tried to type some things that are key takeaways as you were speaking. Troy, you talked about knowing your values, understanding what's important to you. I think that was very important. Taking the time to do that, I think is really good. This is in no particular order of importance, of course. I love what you said, Lauren, about listening helps build a plan. And once you have that, you know how to execute. Amazing skill that SEs all have. Take time to notice your skills and strengths that you have. Like, Puneet, you talked about that. And I love that. It's just a step, not a lifetime commitment. And you back yourself, right? I think that's the key thing that I found as SEs, that we actually have incredible amounts of skill. Like, and if you think about just the current role for all of you on this call today, the current role you're in right now, you do every single one of these things, right? As part of your job. You try to understand what's important to your customer. You listen, you're doing discovery to build out how you can engage. You go and learn products or tools in order to build solutions. You take it once, if you make a decision to go down one path and it doesn't work, you pivot, and then finally, that, half the time you're being told to go into a demo the next day, you don't waver, you go off and you do what you need to, you go and do it. So all those key skills are all there. We can apply it to your next role as well. So I thought that was really, really cool that these gentlemen talked to us about it. I'm just gonna quickly, I think there's a quick chat there. Let me make sure. Okay. All right, next. Oops. So we didn't actually have any questions, so we'll carry on. I just want to say, again, thank you to all of you, but don't forget that there is a podcast that gets released every single week. So take the time, you get to learn from a whole bunch of people. There is the head of I think the most recent one is by the head of North America PreSales for ServiceNow, Christine Engelberger. She actually talks about how to build your personal brand, which is huge from a pre-sales perspective. And also maybe join our Slack organization, join the Slack channel. There's about 3,500 people on there and growing every day. By all means, that's where the community engages. So, if you want to tap into new job opportunities, potentially asking mentoring questions, that's a great place to go. And then, of course, don't forget, 23rd of July, same time, slightly different link. We're actually going to be talking about what leadership is. Quite often, and I'm sure even people on this panel right now, we all think about our next step as we should go be a manager. Well, leadership isn't just about management. It's also about developing others. And sometimes, we have more of those opportunities. So join us at 2:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, 23rd July, and you get to hear Jordan Barker from Alteryx take us through that as well. I noticed there's a Q&A. So there is a question just really quickly about whether there's an ANZ or APAC specific channel on Slack. Yes, there is, Lukman. So just follow, if you go to presalescollective.com/Slack, you can join, and there's a whole bunch of channels for APAC, Australia, and also different other interesting groups there as well. All right. And then, of course, if you are a leader on this call, so you're a pre-sales leader today, you're managing a team, and you would like to be part of a smaller channel where you can discuss some of the challenges of leadership and potentially, ask for advice and mentorship, you can, of course, join the Pre-Sales Leadership Collective, where you be part of a private Slack channel so that you can openly discuss some of the challenges you're having in a safe environment. Do take the time to do that too. And then finally, of course, you can follow us on LinkedIn. Everything from today's recording will be posted on there as well. So you can listen to it, share it, and you can also go back and listen to some of the previous ones too. And with that, thank you so much. And we will see you again in 2 weeks. Thank you so much to our panelists, Troy, Lauren, and Puneet. Thanks for sharing with us, and all the best in your future endeavors. And hopefully you'll come back to the best job in the world, because clearly you guys aren't in the best jobs in the world.
becoming clear now. Thanks for having us, Paul.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, bye.